Cussing is part of queer culture. Don't deny me my rights. Be advised. Hey y'all, I'm Jenn. I'm from Oakland and I'm an androgynous, black, lesbian feminist and a lover of all black people.
This is Daren. I'm an asexual novelist, researcher, and bona fide comic book fanatic from the widest part of Southern California.
Orange County. We're queer millennials with 3 kids and nearly 20 years of marriage.
This is a podcast about the realities of blackness, adulting, and relationships.
This is That Black Couple. Hi.
Hi.
I'm back.
I'm glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. Being gay.
Being gay.
G-H-E-Y, gay. Gay.
Not that regular gay.
Not that regular happy gay, because sometimes I'm a petty gay. Sometimes I'm like gay. Emo gay.
Oh, emo gay.
Like, gay.
Mm-hmm.
Daria gay. Gay. You know?
Yeah.
Not like, gay. We're gay. That's what G-A-Y is. It's for white people.
Why they gotta be just for white people?
In my mind, when I go gay, I just see like a little white guy.
I do too.
And his little Speedos. And his penis is just rolled up in there. And he's got perfectly flexed thighs. And they're waxed. And a little bitty shirt. And he's holding like a macchiato in his left hand. And a little puppy under his arm on the right hand side.
And he's like kicking a leg up
and
in
he's
the
like,
air.
Gay! And he has someone next to him who looks just like him, except they're Asian or some type of non-threatening body type.
Wow. That was very, very specific.
And he's in Venice Beach.
I have to admit, that's when you say gay,
but he lives in Santa Monica.
That's
and he works in downtown LA.
That's the same picture I get.
And he parties at Gotham.
But you know, black people can do that too.
Gay. Anyway, I'm talking about the G-H-E-Y gays, the gays. Okay, the gays. We're talking about the gays today.
What are we talking about with
this
relation to the gays?
Season 5, episode 8 of That Black Couple, and we are talking about queerness and self-naming. About us being able to be ourselves in public and wherever we want to be at all times. Okay, so this is gonna be lit. Are you ready for this?
No.
Oh, I thought you said you stay ready.
I stay ready.
So you don't have to get ready.
But I don't know if one can be ready for what's about to transpire.
Because the Bruce Banner is kicking in.
Oh God.
So grab again. We're hydrating. Grab your water. Smart water is excellent. Grab some smart water.
Good water.
Get you some liquid IV in there. You know, up your ante. Make sure you got those vitamins. Okay. Have a seat. You want to be sitting down when you listen to us because we don't have no sense. Mostly Daren. All right. This is That Black Couple. I'm Jenn.
I'm Daren.
He's Daren. Before we get started, I'd like to make sure that you follow us on the platform formerly known as Twitter, which, by the way, Elon Musk wants to charge us $1 to be on Twitter.
Ain't that about a bitch?
A bitch is leaving. That's about a bitch. Twitter and Instagram at That BLK Couple. On Facebook at That Black Couple. And look us up on the old geriatric analogous email and internet at thatblackcouple.com. www.thatblackcouple.com.
That Bruce Banner is kicking in, ain't it?
You think so?
It's here.
I don't care.
It's in the room.
Grow up.
I'm not being hotboxed today, but it's in the room.
Wow. How you gonna go back to like 3 episodes ago?
I'm just, you know.
Nobody is hot.
I'm giving everyone an update.
Now you say something.
Oh, see now. We see how this works now. Oh, I appreciate it. You didn't.
I blew it to the right.
Yeah, I mean, it's an enclosed space, so we'll see.
I blew it to the right.
We'll see how that goes. But I appreciate the effort.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So, as you already know, you can stream our podcast episodes everywhere. Apple Podcasts, on SoundCloud, Amazon Music. I saw we were on Player FM today.
What is that?
I don't even know exactly what it is, but it's a thing that plays music or podcasts. It plays something because it says player, and guess what? Our episodes are there. So if you're looking for a podcast to listen to, you can find us on all the places where you listen to podcasts. All right. You ready to roll? You ready to do it?
I am absolutely ready.
All right.
Let's get started.
Let's go.
Okay, so first things first. Segment 1. Let's talk about that. This is LGBT History Month.
Every October.
Did you know that? Did you know that?
I didn't know that, no.
It's LGBT History Month, and I feel like I haven't heard much about it. I feel like when I look on the internet, when I'm on my little Instagram, doom scrolling, I've seen very little.
Well, it's because it's October, so it's Halloween month.
I get it, but how whack is that? Like, Pride is popping, but the month that's about our history is essentially like nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm excited for us to talk about LGBT History Month today, but we're going to talk about it from the perspective of thinking about the ways that we are ourselves and present and in our bodies today, right? One thing that we always think about with history, where I was like, oh, who's this iconic queer person who used to exist? Maybe Abraham Lincoln was gay. And we do this whole thing where we try to go back and kind of in a lot of ways affirm ourselves by locating ourselves in history. And I understand that. And it is important, right? It's something we do across all marginalized groups. We do it as women. We do it as queer people. We do it as Black folk, disabled folk. We do this because that's how our human nature operates. We right. understand ourselves in our connection to other people. But what I want to do today is, I think, talk about how things have changed for us. And I think a lot about, over just the course of my life, how being queer has been so different, and being out and being queer has been so different. Like we were born in 1984. I've always been, I think, a gay girl, and I didn't see any of that reflected in mainstream culture at all growing up. Like, the queer kid was the weird kid. The queer kid was made fun of on TV. The queer kid was the kid that, was the deviant, was suspended from school, and it was because they were gay. They were holding a secret, But now, like I'm watching television shows and everyone's gay, like everyone's like a little bisexual, little pansexual, and it's so common and so normal. It's in commercials, now. And I spent National Coming Out Day at a Janelle Monáe concert in Austin, Texas. And Janelle, as we know, is non-binary and is very much a queer person. And it was so dope to be in this huge open air space with all these queer people who were just being themselves, and it was safe. You know what I'm saying? Like, we were just all vibing and connecting to one another. Beyonce has had this Renaissance tour that, even though Beyonce reads as a very heterosexual, very normative person, she made a whole album essentially dedicated to ballroom culture. Yeah. And has brought back a lot of sounds that folks had kind of forgotten about. And queer folks came out. You know what I'm saying? Like, it changed it shifted the economy, right? So I just think that there's ways that now, as I'm looking at 40 next year, like, there's ways that I get to be out, and I get to be, myself. And I'm using the language of out because that's the language that we unfortunately have been socialized with. I'll talk about a little later about the problematics of being considered out, in air quotes. But, I think it's dope to be able to be in these spaces, and not have to worry about my safety, and not have to worry about, about what other folks like me are experiencing, because we have places to go.
Well, for me, I just want to bring it to everyone's attention that Asexuality Awareness Week is October 22nd through the 28th.
Yes.
And even as you're talking about like naming and talking about identities and talking about visibility and all of those things, right? Like, asexuality has been around since the dawn of time, but the very concept of asexuality being an identity is something that's, I think relatively new. And then even the fact that this month is LGBT History Month, right? There's a lot of queer identities,
right, that they left off of there
that aren't in LGBT, right? And a lot of, I know with society, right, people, they take a long time to kind of catch up and to understand things and to come to new realizations, right? And so, it used to be everyone was straight or gay, right? If you were something else, you were just gay. Then we got gay, and then we got lesbians, and then we got bisexuals. It's like, whoa.
Then we got it's like a new car.
Yeah, it's like whoa.
The Jordans being re-released, and
you get a name, and then being trans was
it's like, oh,
what is this?
Which is so interesting because trans folks been trans folks since the dawn of time.
Since the dawn of time. It's the societal recognition.
Right.
Right. And that's my point of all of this is right. The self-naming is so important because you are getting to define who you are.
Right.
Right. And the movement of self-naming has been so important because you're defining who you are despite society.
Absolutely.
Maybe wanting to look over you or discount you or say that you're not real or whatever. It's saying in spite of, I'm going to name myself. I'm going to give myself a definition for who I am outside of your societal norms.
That's it.
And that's why this is so important.
Right.
This podcast is supported by generous donations from our patrons and listeners. Become a supporter today by heading to www.patreon.com/colorcombosmedia.
You can stream the show on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud. When you listen, please consider hitting that heart button, sharing, giving us a 5-star rating, and leaving some dope comments. This helps us with our page rankings and gets more listeners for the show. Thank you so much.
We're back.
We are back.
We're back.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do the conversation.
Okay.
So we're talking about being queer today.
Mm-hmm.
And I love a stat.
I know you do.
I just think, it really helps to give us some parameters, some grounding in the conversation. And I want to talk about youth.
Okay.
So, trigger warning, we're going to talk about self-harm and death by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
But within the last year, 45% of LGBTQ youth seriously considered attempting death by suicide. LGBTQ youth who felt high social support, though, from their family reported attempting suicide at less than half the rate of those that felt lower moderate social support. Also, fewer than 1 in 3 transgender and non-binary youth found that their home was gender affirming.
Fewer than 1 in 3?
Fewer than 1 in 3.
Wow.
Like I said, it's scary,
yeah.
right? And this is also happening at a time where the transgender youth population has doubled within the last 5 years.
Right.
Right. So we're seeing a rise
in
self-identifying, out transgender youth at a time where they're still reporting that they're not getting support. And there's a wealth of stats on all of this, and I don't want to just be like the downer.
Absolutely.
But you think about the things that people hear at school, the bullying, things that happen online, the things that they're seeing in the news, right?
Absolutely.
It's like negativity everywhere.
Absolutely.
Right. And so imagine being a child, and that's the environment that you're having to face.
About it.
Transgender individuals, out transgender individuals are younger on average than the U.S. population. Nearly 1 in 5 people who identify as transgender are ages 13 to 17, compared to less than 1 in 10 who are 13 to 17 in general. Right. So basically, 13 to 17 out of the whole population accounts for about 8%.
Right.
But for transgender people,
it's an overrepresentation.
At 18%.
It's disproportionate.
Right. And this is also at a time, remember, where there's all these laws. This is war against transgender identity, where they're now at a point where there's a risk of you being barred from actual life-saving, medically services. Necessary, medical procedures.
Yes.
And it's so strange to me that all that is happening. But to me, it also shows how much more important it is to have self-naming.
Yes.
Right. To have people be able to say who they are and to say it loud, and for people to understand, the gravity of these types of things.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. Given all those stats, this is why I want to talk about this concept of coming out, right? Like the concept of coming out, growing up, I never really challenged it. It always felt a little strange because I was like, who am I coming out to? Like, first of all, I felt like people already knew that I was gay. And I think my mom kind of knew I was trans. But, people who knew. So I never felt like I was coming out to anybody. But then as I got older and I encountered the barriers to my identity, right? The ways that people would talk about queer folk, the ways that people would treat queer folk, And all the stats you're listing, right? Not living in gender affirming spaces, not being around gender affirming people, being around people who would kind of treat you like, well, I love you, anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like your first offense was being gay and being trans. And so I realized that coming out was about their power, right? It was really from their perspective. It was from the perspective of cisgender heterosexual people, because to them, I belong in a closet. I belong somewhere hidden away. I belong somewhere out of sight and out of mind. Mm-hmm. And for me to then say, well, I'm gay, right, is this act of courage, right? I would talk to my friends and like women I was dating about like their coming out stories. And I remember feeling so disappointed because I never had a coming out story. I never got to go to a room full of people and go, I'm coming out, everybody, because they already knew. And so nobody really cared ever. But I realized that actually was a good thing. Right? Like, it's going to be a long time to realize I got to invite people in, right? I got to invite people in because I just was being myself the whole time, right? I never changed. Nothing about me ever changed. And I may not have noticed it, right? I may have thought I was hiding, but apparently I was hiding in plain sight. It's like when an elephant tries to hide behind a tree, you know? And, I would talk about girls. I would talk about women because I was gay. And I didn't realize that was gay shit. I would be interested in, I will never forget my line sisters. This was when I was in my 20s. And I was pregnant. And I remember we were talking about singers. And I was like, man, if I was gay. And they all looked at me like, if you was gay, what? I was like, I would date her. And they were like, why would you say that? And I was like, why y'all being weird? Relax, she pretty. And they were like, why would you say that? And I remember being like, that was so weird. I think I came home and told you, like, they were being so weird about it. But it's because I was a gay person. And I also just didn't understand how you could look at Black women and not think, damn, she fine, And I think that this concept of coming out is so harmful, especially for young Black, queer, trans folk, because it puts the power in the hands of the people who are not gender affirming, the people who support these policies, these bathroom bills, the people who are intentionally and purposely misgendering their children. These are people who are moving from a place of preserving the status quo. So coming out to them is terrifying. Coming out to them is, you risk losing your place where you live. You risk losing access to your family. I've seen videos. I remember I saw this video of a boy, and he was doing a makeup tutorial. I think I sent it to you. Yeah. And he looked like he might have been Latinx, and he was doing this makeup tutorial, and he clearly was kind of sneaking to do it. He was kind of in a dark room, and he had his ring light on, and his makeup was beat. Okay, he was looking good. And then his dad came into his room and flicked on the light and just started talking to him. And he tried to run and cover his face. He had so much shame in his body about what he was doing. And his dad came in and was like, hey, what's going on? What you doing? And he was like, oh, nothing. And he was trying to cover it and he was trying to get it off. And his dad was like, hey, I love you. Okay? Like, he just was like, this is fine. You're perfect. I love you. Yeah. And he just started sobbing, crying. And this is a boy. This is a baby. He couldn't have been more than like 12, maybe 14 years old, And imagine being a child and holding that terror, that fear in your body, right? And that's what these folks are doing to these kids, right? When they make them feel shame about who they inherently are. And I say this from experience, being one of those children. I never felt worried that my mother would do anything. I felt like she was gender affirming. She let me show up however I wanted to. My mother let me do whatever I wanted to do. When I cut my hair off, I cut my hair off. When I started dressing like a boy, when I was wearing cornrows and Jordans, she let me do whatever I wanted to do. I went to my 6th grade graduation in combat boots, a mini skirt, stockings, a collared shirt that was untucked, and a leather vest, and a black choker. And I was class president, and I gave a speech in that outfit, okay? My mama said that's how she want to dress. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're talking about. That's how we allow children, we allow young folk to invite us into their world and into the space that they are creating for themselves. I'm grateful that my mom allowed me to invite her in because I was affirmed at home. And even when I wasn't affirmed out in the world, and when I got on the school bus or when I went outside and people were just sexualizing me, my mother was very clear, like, you be who you are, right? You be proud of yourself. You stand up tall and you love your body. And she always affirmed that for me. And it's not that hard to do that for young people.
It's not.
And
from a place of love.
Right.
It's not.
This whole coming out narrative we have to stop it, because no one should have to feel this terror of, if I open this closet door and come out of the dark, what will they do to me? We should allow space for people to invite us into the world that they've created for themselves and curate it, and so that we can discover the beauty that is there, as opposed to us trying to make them more like society. How boring is that?
I think also the concept of coming out, it implies like I've been a secret person this whole time.
Right.
Like I've been living a double life.
Right.
Like the person you thought I was is not who I am.
I've been hiding from you.
Right. And that's not really the case.
No.
Right. It's, your sexuality, your identity, all of those are aspects of who you are.
And they're parts of our journey.
Right.
We come to it in lots of different ways. And sometimes we're coming out to ourselves multiple times. We have shame already in our bodies. Because I know me, I had guilt when I realized I was gay because I was raised Christian.
Yeah.
And I was told I would go to hell. Like, I had to sit with that in my body. Like, sometimes we have to sit with ourselves and be like, am I coming out to myself, or am I inviting myself in? Because you don't want to be the oppressor in your own body.
Wow.
I think we do that to ourselves. I think there's ways that sometimes the people don't even have to be there. Is that we take them with us. We take the negative commentary. We take the stereotypes. We take the comments with us. And then we become the people, right, policing ourselves. And we have to stop doing that.
That is very, very true. That's exactly what happens. I mean, kind of like you're like, I don't really have a coming out story.
Yeah.
I really do have much more of an inviting in story.
Right.
Like, I was just walking around and then I made a post on social media and I was like, hey, go Ace, moving on. Like, and that's the thing, that's the one thing I don't like about like the concept of coming out is it's like, let's make a big to do about it. Right.
Yeah.
And I get the idea of celebrating and I don't want to, quash anyone's idea of celebrating who they are and different aspects of who they are.
Sure.
But it's kind of like, here we go, big announcement.
And now we're gonna fight you all, and
I don't like the dynamics
Me
of
either.
that. I like you said, much more the concept of inviting people in and saying, hey, let me just share some information about myself. Let me, let's build vulnerability and closeness.
We're not combatants.
It doesn't need to be like.
And also, my identity is not up for debate. So me inviting you in means that you're a guest. And you can be uninvited at any time. Mm-hmm. If you have a problem with who I am and how I show up and how I name myself, then you can absolutely fucking go.
Yeah.
Bye.
It's like you said, it's where the power is located.
That's it.
And the concept of coming out is something that you're doing for other people.
Right.
And inviting in is something that you're doing for yourself.
Precisely.
You can find my mom and dad, aka That Black Couple, on the web at thatblackcouple.com. That Black Couple is owned and operated by Color Combos Media. If you would like to help fund our content, sign up at www.patreon.com/colorcombosmedia. Please consider giving us $5 or $10 per month to help us build our platform and grow our organization. You can also give one-time donations at www.paypal.me/colorcombosmedia. All donations are welcome.
Okay, we are back with the reflection.
Yes.
So I've been thinking a lot about pronouns because I feel like it's one of the most explicit ways we name ourselves. As a non-binary, agender person, a person who identifies as gender flux, meaning my gender just kind of shifts over the course of the day, the course of the week, the course of the year. There are times where I feel very much a woman, and I identify as a Black woman generally. But most of the time I don't feel gender at all. I don't know what it means to feel gender. I ask people all the time, like, do you feel like a girl? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, really? that sounds cool, you know?
Yeah.
But I've never had that. I've never felt like a girl or a boy. You know, sometimes I do feel like a boy, you know? I just feel like a human in a body. And so they, them feels very comfortable for me because she, for me, only works in certain environments and with certain people. Generally, you know, gendered pronouns are a little off-putting for me. But sometimes recently when people say he to me, I used to feel bad about it. Like, oh my gosh, somebody misgendered me. But now I'm like, he works, you know? So I think, you know, with pronouns, since my pronouns are they and them, that's what I prefer from strangers. So I put my pronouns everywhere. If you see me in a Zoom, my pronouns are there. If you see me on Twitter or anywhere on social media, my pronouns are right there. I put them on everything. And so what a lot of like the people who want to undermine you do is they intentionally misgender you. They call you, oh, that's a lady. Oh, that's a girl, you know, whatever. Or they do the whole like they, them. What's that? How does that work? Oh my God. Like
you're multiple people.
How are you plural? Oh my gosh. You know, and it's so strange to me because, you know, then I talk to children. You know, we have 3 children and 2 bonus children. And my youngest bonus child is 5. He's 5. He just turned 5 in April. And when I say they, he says they. That's it. He doesn't go, that's a she. What is a they? Blah, blah, blah. He doesn't do that. And he's only 5. He's a 5-year-old baby. The other day I was talking to my 12-year-old daughter and we were talking about someone who, you know, was assigned female at birth. And I said, oh, well, they are non-binary and they use they, them pronouns. And my daughter said, okay. So they, and she kept talking. And it was so effortless.
Seamless.
There was nothing changed. We just kept talking about the person because you know what? The person's a human and they deserve to be respected in the way that they want to be treated, right? And it's so interesting to me because what queer trans folks are asking is just to be respected and seen in the ways that we want to be respected and seen, right? We should be allowed to decide how we want to be interacted with. It reminds me, this is meme, right? Where we talk about, you know how you get an email and just say, I hope this email reaches you well. Or like sayings where it's like, you know, I perceive you as blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, don't perceive me. I don't want to be perceived, right? And I think that's part of what queer and trans folks are saying is like, we don't want to be projected on and perceived through these lenses that have always been inherently violent.
Yeah.
These lenses, we talked about this in the last episode about mental health. These lenses are inherently unjust. And so in naming ourselves, we're going through a process of self-reclamation, right? Of taking ourselves back from these systems that tell us that unless we are like everybody else, we are not good enough.
Yeah.
And that we are not human, right? Now we are objects. Now something is inherently wrong with us, right? And I think it's so important. I'm not saying that everybody has to use they, them pronouns or that, you know, normative binary pronouns, she and her, and they, and he and him are not okay. Or that other expansive pronouns, the z's, you know, g's, all the other types of pronouns are not appropriate. All of them are appropriate. That's my point. Everything is appropriate. People who prefer no pronouns, right? To just be called D, right? Like that's also appropriate. And we should be allowed to dictate how people will address us. That is a part of the inviting in process to say, if you are to interact with me in my body, here are the boundaries. And that's why I love this moment because I feel like young people taught us that.
They did.
They did.
And there was something that you said just talking about, you know, the comparison between the individual and society.
Yeah.
And, you know, the pressures and things. And especially with pronouns, how like society wants you to have, you know, all cis pronouns. And so anything outside of that is different from the norm.
Yeah.
Right. And that is the queer legacy. That's, you know, that's where the word queer comes from. It's like, you know, not the norm. That's what it is. Right. And, you know, being asexual to me, it really tracks with that queer legacy, right? Like, so it used to be, you know, you go to the psychiatrist or the psychologist and they would say, oh, you're gay, you're a man and you're attracted to men. Well, that's a psychological issue.
Mental illness.
Right. And that was the legacy. It's like, we need to get you back on track with what society wants. And of course we've made strides there to where we're not doing that dumb shit anymore.
Right.
And to me, being asexual, I feel like that's the same thing, right? Like, you say that you're asexual, and the litany,
right?
The litany of weird shit.
Is your
that
wife
people
your
say.
wife not pretty?
They're not pretty, or you just haven't had good sex from someone.
She's not good at it.
Or, you know,
you don't like her no more.
Or just say that you're gay.
Right.
Or like it's like the litany of shit that people can come up with to justify why your existence and your identity is incorrect.
Right.
Is wild.
Right.
Like, it's actually much easier to just say, that's how you identify?
Okay.
Cool. We are now moving forward with that knowledge in hand, right? And that's why it's so important to be able to name yourself, to be able to define yourself for yourself, to say, this is who I am, this is how I show up. And it does not have to be something that is static.
That's it.
It is something that can change. I feel like that's another thing with asexuality that people really, really struggle with, right? Is people feel like you are branding yourself and labeling yourself and saying, sex is off limits for me and I'm never going to have sex. And that's just something. And there's different varying degrees of asexuality. Some people only like sexual relations with certain types of people. Some people don't want to have sex or only want to have certain types of sex. Some people are sex repulsed. Some people are not, right? And sometimes people are asexual for a while and their identity might shift or change. It can go back and forth, right? It is a way that you are identifying and naming yourself on your own terms.
That's
just
right.
in the way you talk about pronouns, right? You are defining, this is how you should address me. This is how I present myself, right? Respect that.
That's it.
And that to me, the whole entire queer conversation and the conversation around naming is all about respect.
That's all it is.
And if respect is too hard, then we have a really big problem.
Yeah, why are you in civic society if you can't just respect human beings as human beings? Why are you allowed to be outside with us? You're not safe.
At a baseline.
Right.
At a baseline. It's just respect.
Yeah.
Outside of that, we can have conversation, we can have debate, we can go back and forth. But we gotta at least start at respect.
At respect. Yeah, I'm not fucking with you if you don't respect my basic identity and humanity.
Thank y'all for listening. Before you go, make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at ThatBLKCouple, on Facebook at ThatBlackCouple, and look us up on the internets at www.thatblackcouple.com.
Bye.